November 16, 1957, sheriff's deputies entered the farmhouse of Edward Theodore Gein, a shy, soft-spoken bachelor who lived alone in an isolated farmhouse outside Plainfield, Wisconsin. They were looking for Bernice Worden, a local hardware store owner who'd vanished earlier that day. Her son arrived at the shop to find blood on the floor and a receipt with one name on it: Ed Gein. Police drove out to his farmhouse expecting to question a socially awkward recluse. That was the moment the search for a missing woman turned into one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American history, one that inspired horror films for decades. Deputy Dan Chase walked into a shed behind Gein's house and stopped cold. Worden was hanging upside down from a wooden beam, her ankles bound with rope. She had been decapitated, gutted, and dressed out the same way hunters field-dress deer. But the house was where things went from horrific to nightmarish. Inside Gein's farmhouse, investigators found something far stranger than a murder. They found chairs upholstered with human skin, lampshades stitched from faces, a belt made of nipples, a garbage can fashioned from flesh, soup bowls carved from skulls, a box filled with female genitalia, a collection of noses stored like trophies. The face of one woman had been removed with such precision it could be worn like a mask. At first, police assumed multiple murders, but Gein, calm and almost polite in questioning, insisted he'd only killed two women, Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan, a tavern owner who disappeared in 1954. Everything else, he said, came from graves. He claimed he'd made at least 40 trips to local cemeteries at night, digging up recently buried women who reminded him of his mother because, in his words, he wanted some company. His mother was a deeply religious, domineering woman who raised Ed and his brother to believe that the world was evil, women were sinful, and sex was corrupt. She let no one near them and allowed no one near herself. When she died in 1945, Ed sealed off her bedroom like a shrine, but let the rest of the house rot. Ed was left alone with his thoughts, his mommy issues, and a taxidermy hobby from hell. He slept next to the stove in the kitchen and spent nights reading about Nazi experiments, anatomy, grave robbing, and cannibalism. Gein admitted to authorities that he was trying to create a woman suit so he could, in his words, crawl into her skin and become his mother. Authorities found a vest from a woman's torso, complete with breasts and leggings stitched from human legs. He'd practiced walking around the farmhouse wearing them. The press ran wild. Journalists called him the Plainfield Ghoul and the Mad Butcher, but Hollywood took notes. Robert Bloch, who lived just 35 miles away, loosely based Norman Bates of Psycho on Gein, an awkward loner devoted to his mother. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre borrowed his face masks and furniture of flesh. The Silence of the Lambs built Buffalo Bill from his desire to become a woman by wearing skin. In court, Gein was declared legally insane, which may be the least surprising verdict in American history. He spent the rest of his life in a mental institution, reportedly polite and mild-mannered. Nurses described him as quiet. He spent the rest of his life gardening, reading magazines, and reportedly laughing at jokes other patients didn't understand. He died of respiratory failure in 1984 at age 77. To this day, only 2 confirmed murders are tied to him, yet his crime changed horror forever. While most serial killers disappear in court files, Ed Gein became something else entirely, the flesh and bone blueprint of 3 of the scariest horror films ever created. This isn't legend, this is sick history.